Hello, folks. I'm Nick Bernardo, your host of MyGovWatch Live, the B2G Roundtable. If you're east of the Rocky Mountains here in the U.S., good afternoon. Good morning to those out west, and hello to anyone joining us from the far corners of the earth or watching online in the future. Today's Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. This series is brought to you by MyGovWatch. With a curated white glove approach, MyGovWatch delivers leads into more than 200 industries using AI best practices at double the rate of free government tools and at a fraction of the cost of legacy websites. Big government contracts do not start with a solicitation, but all roads lead to one. And your path to winning RFPs does not have to include spending thousands of dollars per year. Start your 14-day trial today. And this month's co-host is someone who's been with us before and whom we are very happy to see again, Ervin Hughes. Hey, Erv.
Hey, Nick, how are you, sir?
Great, doing great, doing great. So Erv is the founder and president of American Credit Assurance and a managing director at Rainstar Capital Group. He has co-hosted the Small Business Today show on the Wall Street Radio Network. As a former commercial banker with more than 25 years of successful experience, he has served more than 4,000 small businesses and has arranged more than $100 million, that's 9 digits, in financing nationally. Mr. Hughes has been recognized for his achievements by the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Texas Department of Transportation, NFL's Houston Texans, the National Investment Banking Association, and a host of major U.S. corporations, as well as other federal, state, and local government agencies. And the last time Erv was with us was almost 2 years ago. It was October of 2022. Erv is a Texas native in the Houston area. I am near Philadelphia. So Erv was wearing all of his Houston Astros regalia. I had a Phillies hat, and I don't know if we spoke much about it, but congratulations. 2 years later, my Phillies are looking pretty good, Erv. What do you think?
Yes, listen, I think with what I've seen so far, Nick, you guys are probably on the way back to the World Series. You're going to have some obstacles there, obviously, but I think you guys have put together quite a roster. You know, we're going to be a minute trying to get back into competition. With the retirement of Dusty Baker here, and of course, we've had some players, move out due to trade and due to trades and salary caps and that sort of thing. So, it's just part of the business of baseball. But I got to tell you, you guys look great.
Well, it only matters what happens in October and November. So I would take 90 wins in a ring over 115 and nothing.
Absolutely, all day, all day.
So, folks, we're going to talk to Erv a little bit about his business and what's going on with him. If we've spoken, we will definitely get to you in the next hour and a half. I already see most of the folks who I've spoken with are already with us. So, rest assured, we will certainly be talking about some of the questions you have. Before we get started, I just want to say I've been using virtual backgrounds here and trying to make them timely and topical with where we are throughout the year. So obviously the Memorial Day holiday is coming up. This is the cemetery at D-Day in Normandy. This is just a somber photo, but a poignant reminder of why we are celebrating the Memorial Day holiday. And just a timely thing, and Erv, I don't know if we got a chance to talk about this. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. We've made a business decision that we are going to be drastically reducing the cost of MyGovWatch for small veteran-owned businesses and disabled veteran-owned businesses. So this is a press release just from a couple days ago. And so WOSBs are going to get a third off whatever our current pricing is. So currently that's up to $360 per year in savings. Disabled veteran businesses, and this is all with documentation, will spend $7 per month just to cover transaction costs and a little bit of admin costs. So up to $1,000 in savings per year for disabled veteran-owned businesses. So that's just something I wanted to point out. If anyone would like to share anything about a military family member or something in your family related to all things military with the holiday coming up, feel free to do so. So I'm going to kill my share. And Erv, let's start with this. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the companies that you're involved in, the relationship between them, and what you all do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, Nick. So kind of how we got into this, right into the GovCon space is we have a parent company called Level 3 Corporation, which is a management consulting group. I'm a former commercial banker, and so way back in 2003, I left my job at the bank to start my consulting group. And so we started out just kind of providing SBA loans, micro loans, basically for people who were trying to get started in business. And that sort of in 2008, things changed, right? And so that sort of morphed into government contracting. That was kind of our response to at that time, some of you might remember the meltdown in the credit markets at that time. And so our pivot is to start providing management consulting, training, and technical assistance for small businesses who were interested in government contracting. We're still doing that today. And that all is done through Level 3 Corporation. So if you guys see a relationship between Level 3 Corporation and American Credit Assurance, the reason is because American Credit Assurance is our PO finance group. We only finance purchase orders from government agencies. And the whole purpose of American Credit Assurance is to help small government contractors build credit with their suppliers. And so that's a wholly owned subsidiary of Level 3 Corporation. So I just want to make that clear for everybody that Level 3 Corporation is kind of our management consulting, training, and technical assistance group. And then we have a PO finance group, American Credit Assurance, because one of the things that we learned is as we trained people to get into the government contracting space, the next thing that we had to address was if you're operating in the supply chain, now not so much for services, but if you're operating at all in the supply chain, then business credit is something that's absolutely going to come up and you're going to need it. And so we spun off a subsidiary company to do that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story because it's a need that comes up all the time. I mean, there are small businesses that can certainly win government contracts, large municipal, large state, even small federal contracts that would be large at the state and local level, where they can do the work, but accessing capital is not always easy, and they need as many avenues to do that as possible. So it's great that you provide that. So Irv, before we talk a little bit more about what you're doing these days and other newer initiatives that you've been working on, I'd like to see if Serena can join us. And Serena, I'm going to promote you. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. And Serena, we need your audio. If you'd like to share video too, that's great, not required.
Yeah.
Hello, Serena.
Hi. I have
Welcome
many
to
questions.
MyGovWatch Live. What do you do and where are you joining us from?
I am the owner of Pulse Marketing. We are a fractional marketing agency, typically working with businesses from 5 to 25 million that don't want to hire an in-house team. So we operate in that way. And then also I am the author of Exposed, You Can't Heal When You Hide. It's a memoir about my personal story.
Well, that is fascinating. And with the Memorial Day holiday coming up, would you like to share any Memorial Day plans, any Memorial Day memories, or any family military history?
My stepdad has been in my life since I was 12 years old, and he is a veteran. And I have to say that he is the most inspirational person that has come into my life. And I am just so grateful for him and his service. And so that's what I would want to share.
Well, that's fantastic. And please thank him for his service for us. And so you've written a memoir, and how connected to the business is that, or are they just completely separate?
Well, the beauty in writing your story when you're a business owner is that there is always the connection. Your personal life is always, impacted by your business and vice versa. I've owned the agency for 10 years. I started in 2013. My husband originally quit his job and came into work in the agency doing sales. We hit over 1 million. It was amazing. However, he struggled with mental health issues and, some other challenges. once I recognized that those were seeping into our business, I had to find the courage to leave. I left him in October of 2019, and he took his life in March of 2020. And so how that my book ties into my business is, how do you recover from trauma when it's in your business? You know, things like that. So that's how it connects.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that personal anecdote. And, obviously, you're continuing to grow and get involved in different things. GovCon seems to be something new. And what did you want to talk to us about today?
Well, because I am trying to grow the agency, we've finally stabilized after, the huge impact from that event. And it's beautiful. We have a ton of private clients, and I've been trying to get my foot in the door with a government, contract, but my challenge is that I don't have any experience working in government contracts. And so a lot of these RFPs are asking for that. Do you have a certain number of years of experience working with the city, and things like that. So my challenge is, how do I separate myself without having that experience? And what are the three uniques that they're looking for that will set the RFP apart?
And so knowing that you're in the marketing business, and by the way, Irv's going to jump in as things come up. And Irv, I encourage you, I know you're not shy. Please don't be shy in answering any questions as we move forward. But I would say in your business, the marketing business, government agencies, there's never been a time in history where they're starting to understand that there is such a thing as branding. And there is such a thing as identifying your government agency, whether it be a town that is trying to drive, destination marketing or something like that,
Yes.
or any number. So they're starting to get it. And that's the good news. The bad news is, as you say, it's hard to get your foot in the door. And I think you mean through solicitations when everybody knows that the opportunity is out there. Now, the good thing is, if you have good commercial references, it's only a numbers game and a matter of time. So, you don't have to name names, you can, but do you have significant commercial clients that, would excite someone?
Yeah, so we've in the past we've worked with Nike. We've worked with companies like we work a lot in construction. So some of the builders, KB Homes, DR Horton, Pulte. So there are names that we could use. It just felt like every time we read the RFP requirements, it said mandatory requirement to have 3 years working with the city. So then we were like, well, do we even submit? Or are we going to put in all this work in this 55-page RFP and then find out that we didn't even qualify?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a valid concern. I would say two things. One, the volume of opportunities for what you do is high enough every year, and we see this on our site all the time, where you will certainly see many where they say you need to have city experience or county experience or don't bother. And by the way, they cannot move back from that requirement once they put it in writing. But there will certainly be a number of them where they just say, tell us your references, right? And at that
Okay, so
point,
I have to search for got it.
So I'm not going to say, it would be half of them, but maybe if it's 10%, you just need to identify the 10% and go after those. The other thing I would say is that there are lots of marketing opportunities that are below the radar. So are you familiar with the thresholds that require contracts to go out to bid?
No.
Okay, so every state has a threshold. There might even be local thresholds where under certain dollar amounts, there does not have to be a solicitation. So I would be looking for RFPs where they're not specifically saying you need government experience and just try to focus on those. And separately, in your local area within 100 miles, try to identify needs that you think government agencies have for what you do, where they don't even know they have a need, and try to sell them something under the threshold after you've identified the threshold. And so I'm going to stop there and see if Irv has some words of wisdom to add.
First of all, Serena, thanks so much for sharing such an intimate story about your life and your business. I really, really appreciate that, because I can tell you that resilience is an absolute requirement to be successful in business. And you obviously have demonstrated already how incredibly resilient you are. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
So yeah, you asked a great question, and certainly Nick is spot on in what he's saying. How I got my start in government contracting, especially in services on the service side, with regard to my management consulting business, is, believe it or not, each agency at every level has what Nick was talking about, an informal threshold. That's reasonably small potatoes, okay? Generally, those are anywhere from under 50,000 at the city and county level down to under 10,000 at the school district level. And one of
We'll
the
take
things,
the small potatoes to get experience.
well, absolutely, no, absolutely, Serena, you're spot on. And what I'm saying is, how I got in the door was not necessarily responding to RFPs. What I did is I was very, and I'm still, to be clear, I'm still very proactive, where I immediately did research in each agency that I wanted to target so that I could find who the small business coordinators were. I got meetings with them, step two. In those meetings, I introduced my company and my capabilities. And then I invited them to have their end users, whoever's responsible for training, in my case, training, your case, marketing, and set up lunch and learns. And so government people do show up if you're going to give them free food. And so
Good.
and so what I'm getting at is I think you're absolutely on the right glide path to get where you want to go. But I would do a little bit of research first on targeting those agencies, find out who the small business coordinators are or who is responsible in that role. And that's your first stop inside the agency. And then
Perfect.
the next thing is make sure you understand what the informal thresholds are so that you can get in, because I'm going to tell you, being proactive is really critical. I got my start literally in my consulting business by creating the opportunities. Instead of being reactive, I'm still very proactive about going in, approaching the agency, doing some meetings. But your first stop is to find out who is responsible for advocating for small businesses, and especially that you're a woman-owned business. That plays very well.
Perfect. And then do you have a program where you can almost be a support or a provide guidance on which ones, to even consider to apply for, and potentially walking through the process, the RFP process? Is there someone that specializes in that? Because it would be great to have an expert that supports me instead of me putting all this work into it and then having no idea if I'm really, following
Yeah.
through with what they're looking for.
Yeah, so the cool thing about level 3, my management consulting group, obviously, is I have a what I'm going to call a loose association of subject matter experts in those particular fields. So I'm really happy to make a warm connection for you in that. I think you do need to have somebody on your team or certainly in your circle to be able to support you in that area. And the cool thing is that I've been at this, as I mentioned earlier, for a long time. So I've got a pretty significant circle of folks that I can connect you to.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And Serena, I would say the same. I have some folks I can put you in touch with, and Irv, I think there's a tie-in with some things we're going to be talking about pretty soon about like the future of your organization there. So we'll certainly be getting into that. I would add this as well, Serena, just two things. One, when you talk about what are the three unique things, you're able to get information after bids close about why they picked who they picked. And it's called the open records or FOIA process. That's something you can do through our site. We can fulfill that request for you. It's a nominal upcharge over the subscription. You can do it yourself, but there's a time component and they often don't want to do it. And we don't care if they don't want to do it. We make them do it. We can get you copies of winning proposals, evaluation documents. So you might find that you're losing on pricing. You might find that you're losing because of how the proposal looks, which I don't think that would be the case. But certainly looking at things post-mortem will help you figure out why you're not winning. The other thing I wanted to share, and it's related to this, so I just want to stay on this for one more moment. I'm going to share my screen again. And we did a report in March. So in January, we sent out a survey to tens of thousands of government agencies. And I want to point out in your business, Serena, and this is not true for everyone who's with us today. In your business, government agencies are buying something that they've been buying for a very long time. So they routinely buy your services. So that headline of the press release is more likely to be true in your business, because if you have on your resume you've done business with Nike, what else do they need to know? So this is a survey we did. I would encourage anyone to go to our website. I'll drop this link in the chat, and we actually published this report. This is a free report, but you will not believe the numbers in here. What we're finding over and over again is that if you sell something the government routinely buys, a lot of these folks don't care if they've never heard of you before, if you have a good product at a good price and you have the relevant references. So let me stop there, and before we go to someone else, just see if you might have any last parting questions, and you're certainly free to join us as we move forward.
No, thank you so much. I'm just very grateful for your time and your expertise.
Well, thank you very much, Serena. Please stay with us. And if you can think of follow-up questions or anything else you'd like us to touch on, please do it. And I just want to say, let's just see if we still have everyone. So Melinda, I'd like to bring you on next, but Serena, please stay with us. And Irv, while we're making a transition to the next topic, why don't we take this moment to talk a little bit about some of the more recent things that you've been up to? So I know you've been doing some seminars and workshops, and then talk to us a little bit about some of the problems you're looking to solve with the bid process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing and we're expanding on here is we've been doing trainings for people who may be new. They may, and let me be clear about what I'm saying about new. You may not be a startup. You may already have been in business 5 or 10 years or whatnot, but you may be new to government contracting. So for those folks who are brand new startups or folks who are just new to government contracting, we are in the middle of launching a series of basically online training cohorts, if you will. We've been doing them live in person since since we got released from the pandemic shutdown. But we've gotten so much demand from people around the country who really want to get this kind of training. And it's basically foundational training and workshops that we do. So these are pretty much hands-on. And what's interesting, doing hands-on workshops online is really interesting, because a lot of people would think that you can't do hands-on online, but the truth is you really can do that, because we're doing it together. And those have come out to be really, really well. We've graduated just over 100 companies now. And so we're pretty excited about the outcome of that. So we're going to move to a self-paced, that's kind of the thing you were getting at, Nick. We're going to move to a self-paced platform here shortly, because a lot of people we found that want to get into the GovCon space, they're still working full time. And so it's really tough for them to, just from a scheduling standpoint, to get access to the training real time. So we're in the process of producing the videos that's going to drive that self-paced training. So that's point number one. And then point number two is, because of our relationship with MyGovWatch, we've been, you guys, if you're not a subscriber, Nick doesn't know I'm going to say this, but if you're not a subscriber, you should be, because every day we literally get a digest of leads fed to us based on the profile that we've set up on MyGovWatch. Now, what's cool about that, let me give you the good thing, is that those leads come into us every day, depending on your subscription. Mine come in from around the country. By far, it's the best price and best value that's out there. But secondly, let me tell you the other side of the coin is, when you have leads coming in at you every day, boy, you better get really efficient about figuring out how to get those bids back out the door, because that's not Nick's fault, right? So one of the things that we're sort of experimenting with, we just started this, where we're implementing an AI strategy to basically be more efficient to get bids back out the door. as you get into this, if you're new, guys, I know some of you may be relatively new to the space. One of the things you'll find out is that a lot of these RFPs and bid invitations are boilerplate, right? And so there's some nuance to depending on the agency and so on. So we've started to sort of implement an AI strategy to literally complete those documents, make sure that all the writing and the narrative goes in the right places, the prices go in the right places on the agency's documents. With the goal of this, we've mapped our process. You guys will get the opportunity to map your process because everybody's slightly different. But in our process, just to get an RFP out the door is about 25 steps or so. And our goal here is to use the AI strategy. So instead of us manually doing 25 steps, we can take the manual steps down to 5 or 6 steps.
Wow.
We're not there yet, but that's exactly some of the things that we're working on, in our mad science laboratory.
Well, you caused me to wonder, and you may know this about me, but I started my career as a bid writer. So my background comes from that whole world. So I wonder what you think of this question. Like my mind's really starting to work with this. Everyone is afraid of how is AI going to make me obsolete? Or there's a lot of people who are thinking that in different positions. I wonder if you agree with this. AI will not make people who are writing proposals obsolete. They will simply allow one person to work on 6 things at the same time. So the average number of bids received will just go up, and you may have more people employed in these roles. I wonder if you agree.
No, I agree totally, Nick. Listen, AI is not going to replace a person. It's just not. I'll talk about it like this. What is created is never going to be greater than its creator. Okay. And
Amen.
so it's just not going to happen. Now I will tell you that AI, think of it like this. AI is very efficient and it really helps you with your efficiency. But AI is not perfect. It is not going to be perfect, and especially in the GovCon space because there's so much nuance that goes on. But we've been really excited about just the early results that we've seen. And so how we approach that, Nick, is we treat our AI much like we would an employee. If you hire somebody to do a particular task, you still have to provide some oversight to make sure that whatever it is you've asked them to do, that they're doing it correctly. Because just like a human, AI is not perfect. Neither will be a human, and therefore, AI is just never going to replace a human being. So think of it like this, guys. AI needs to, however you use AI, it still needs to be under your supervision. How's that?
Totally agree. Totally agree. And I think what we think about AI now, I wonder how much that's going to evolve in the next 10 years as it really starts to take hold and, start doing things that we never realized it could do and different iterations of it. And I'd like to welcome Melinda to MyGovWatch Live. And Melinda, we just need your audio. I see you appear to be muted. So hi, Melinda, where are you joining us from and what do you do?
Hey, so I'm in Orlando, Florida, just grilling on a skillet like a boiled egg, but I'm really excited to be here. So thank you so much, Nick, for having us.
It's our pleasure. And before we get started, any Memorial Day plans, memories, or family connections?
I always spend time with my family and just celebrating the fact that I just respect military so much and what they've been able to give us here in our country. So I'm just very grateful for the time, and I make sure to take some time to be grateful for it on that day.
Well, we're all going to be enjoying whatever barbecue or festival we're at. And so tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah. So I'm a business coach and I help businesses scale. And one of the ways that I do that is through government contracts because it allows people to create the freedom in business and life. And it's pretty much in line with what everybody said so far. And so over the past 4 years, I've helped businesses scale and secure over $4.4 billion with a win rate of 74% using my 3-point propriety system and compliance review. And so a question I actually put is more common in when I receive discovery call questions, which is how to do business development with the government. I think that, when we're thinking about the client journey, it starts with awareness and consideration, and then it's the RFP. And so oftentimes when I'm talking to small, medium-sized, and large organizations, they're confused. They're like, how do I get ahead of the RFP? So, and I just also wanted to say that I agree with Ervin that MyGovWatch is really powerful. Everybody should have a subscription.
Well, thank you.
Truly, because it's all inclusive and it really works well for business leaders who are trying to stay ahead of business development.
Well, I appreciate that comment, and I just I want to just jump into this from this line of what you had just said, Melinda. So I put on the screen earlier that we did a survey, right? And that survey showed up to 30% of people who were looking at RFP responses could care less if they ever heard of you before. Now, the flip side of that coin is that there are a lot of people who are making purchasing decisions who absolutely do care if they've heard of you before. So what we like to tell people is if you have the wherewithal, meaning the sales staff, the time, the resources, if you have the ability to try to do some old-fashioned networking and getting ahead of the RFP, and I think that's the right phrase, you should absolutely do it. What we're trying to tell people is, even if you do not always have the ability to do that, if you're selling something the government routinely buys, you can't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket, right? So submit an offer. So what challenges are your clients having with getting ahead of the RFP, or what sorts of things are you telling them to do now?
Yeah, so it ranges depending on the client, but for my small businesses, they just don't know which agency to propose to. Like there's so many opportunities, there's so many RFQs and RFPs, and they're like, which ones do I go towards? Once they understand the strategy of how to, like you said, cultivate or create that offer, then they're kind of, there's so many opportunities. Where do I go first? And that's one question. And the second question around the business development is, how do I build those relationships so that they're coming to us, or at least advising us of opportunities that are going to hit are going to be advertised. I was going to use some slang, hit the streets.
Hit the street.
I've been doing this for so long, for like over a decade, that you understand. So what do I do before the advertisement? Because you might have 2 weeks or a month to respond, and it might take some time to create or cultivate that team to respond with. So just those type of questions around procurement.
Absolutely. And Erv, do you want to start with this, or do you want to sort of chime in once I'm done?
Yeah. Let me jump in right there. First of all, Melinda, thanks so much for being on with us. I'm really, really excited to meet you, and I want you to know I am absolutely going to chase you after this, because I want to learn more about kind of what you're doing and that kind of thing. Since you're in the space, I love to connect to other experts in the field, right? One of the biggest things that I am a real advocate for in talking with our clients, my clients run into the exact same thing. I get those questions. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we help them understand that they have to be proactive, and especially with procurement. And the way, as I was talking earlier, is that most of these agencies have somebody that's in the role of being the kind of the small business liaison, or somebody who is that in that role. And I'm huge on helping people learn how to do the necessary research to target the right kinds of agencies, depending on what products or services they're offering. And so one of the resources that's really cool out there is GSA Advantage, where they can just go out there and search for whatever product or service the federal agencies are buying, and then kind of use that to look at, now at the state and local levels, okay, Now, let's target some of those folks, because I think for a lot of people getting started, and I found this to be true, and maybe you concur, that once most of these folks find out how much spending is going on at the federal level with their product or service, they're a bit more motivated to go and now do research at the state and local levels. And so step one for me would be find out who that small business coordinator or advocate is in the agency. Usually there's somebody that's kind of in that role, and then use that relationship to get that advocate to get an audience with procurement. And then step three is, once you can kind of cultivate that relationship, offer up some sort of educational lunch and learn, or some sort of event, either online even, where it still falls under the lunch and learn sort of play, and invite procurement to come to that and learn more about who you are, what you do, and more importantly, to hear feedback from procurement about what kinds of things that they're running into. And that's how I've done it. And that's how I advise my clients to do it. It works really, really well. And so I would just kind of offer that up.
Great comments, Ervin. And I just want to take what you said and sort of like spin it a different way, in a complimentary way. And that is just take a look at this webinar format, for example, Melinda. And this is not B2G, this is B2B, but I would be advising clients to create content that the people they're trying to reach need and want to consume, right?
Yep.
Are there data points that your clients have unique access to that would create reasons why government people need to hear about that? And the lunch and learns are mentioned that whatever format it takes, it could be an email newsletter, it can be a white paper, it can be a format like this. But it's one thing to call and say, hey, do you need to buy XYZ in the next year? I just want to introduce myself because I sell X, Y, and Z. It's another thing to say, hey, we're doing a presentation on X, Y, and Z and how it can help your business. And I think that's what Erv is saying, and I totally agree. I wonder what you think of that.
Absolutely. It's spot on to basically the suggestions that I offer my clients, is to get them in a room, quiet the noise and solve the problems, right? It's just all symptoms at that point until they bring you into the fold, and then you can actually solve the real problems. So we give them a subscription. What we call is the healing process. So we first start with really giving them solutions to symptoms at awareness and consideration. So it's like the lunch and learns, it's the free, lead magnets and things like that, that would be enticing to them, because they're trying to solve the problem right now. Like, what's top of mind for them? What are they Googling? Because they have Google too, and they're looking for those things. Then you're leading them to, the next conversation, which is, how can I entertain you? How can I give you the information so that you feel more empowered and inspired to make changes, whatever the problem is. And then that's where the solution. So you're prepared for whatever the RFP says, because now your approach is tailored to exactly what the problems they have articulated, opposed to like a copy and paste, which could be great depending on what you offer. But there's also services that, if you want to differentiate, there is an opportunity for you to leverage your existing relationships with them, or the ones that you've created before that are comparable, and then present those as well.
Absolutely. And just a couple of other like block and tackle practical things. And you may know this, if not, some of those who are listening, or even if you know some of these things, some of those who are listening haven't heard this. Federally, you can find out who is buying what you're selling through usaspending.gov. So there are data tools at the federal level. You can go on each agency's website and see their spending forecast and see what procurements are coming up. So there are federal tools, and there are some state and local tools as well, but the federal government actually does a pretty good job of telling people in advance, like, this is what we're planning to buy, and seeing this is what we've bought before. At the local level, and I wonder if you all agree with this, if I just started from the premise of saying, well, I would like to be a government contractor, and that's just the starting point, I would be looking at meeting minutes for local governments and just seeing what are they talking about, right, over the next year that they need. And I would figure out how to get into that business with someone who doesn't know how to do it and partner with them. So, parting thoughts?
Yeah,
100%.
I agree 100%. Let me tell you what, budget meetings, get into the budget meetings. And if you miss the meeting, go pull the budget, you know. And that's kind of what I was getting at about being proactive, like, for example, I probably shouldn't say this, but I mean, I'm literally working right now on Q1 2025. I'm doing that right now. And there's no RFPs out on any of that. And so what I'm getting at is I think a lot of people, frankly, are just they're too reactive and they're waiting for RFPs to come out. And frankly, I'm gonna say it like this, is that, guys, I think if you're just trying to build your business, responding to RFPs, frankly, I think you're late. I think you're very late in the process, because it literally takes anywhere from 90, sometimes 120 days for procurement for whoever originated the request inside the agency, getting budget approved, going through the whole procurement process, getting an RFP even put together. That's a whole internal process that most of us won't see. But frankly, you have to be aware that that is what's going on, and that's how you get ahead of it.
Well, I think it's fantastic advice. And Melinda, we appreciate you joining us. Any parting thoughts?
No, thank you so much. I mean, thank you for having this opportunity to talk about it so that more of our businesses can grow and scale. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate MyGovWatch. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have, if you want to just raise your hand once you go back into the attendee role, just raise your hand again if you want to jump on once we get through with a few other people. But thank you so much for joining us. And so Karen Stanley is with us. Karen, can you hear us? And we just need your audio.
I just turned it on.
So Karen, welcome to MyGovWatch Live, the B2G Roundtable. What do you do and where are you joining us from?
So I have a marketing and public relations firm. I'm in Columbus, Mississippi. We do just about everything when it comes to marketing and public relations, and we step in a lot of different manners.
Well, that's fantastic. And any Memorial Day plans, memories, or family connections you'd like to share?
Well, I'll give you two things that I have. My husband was crazy and was in the 82nd Airborne and used to throw himself out of very good planes. He's not anymore, but still just as crazy. And then we in Columbus, Mississippi, which is a very small town, have one of 3 Air Force bases where all pilots that fly for the Air Force train. So even though I'm in a very tiny rural community, we definitely have a big Air Force base support here. They're a huge part of our market. It is an honor to get to share our community with them and their spouses.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I often think about, you hear about these things that happen. You'll hear of terrible accidents in military training. And I always remind myself that these people wrote a blank check up to and including the value of their lives, and something could happen in training. And so those people should be remembered. When you mention training and things like that, just makes me think of that. So I know that you had filled out the form when you signed up, but what sorts of questions do you have today?
Well, one of the things, and Serena and Melinda both answered some of my questions. I think you know that because I sent my questions beforehand. But one of the things that I've already done is gone ahead and gotten woman certified and gotten the, the number and all the things. I have a boatload of numbers now. I feel like NAICS, UEI, CAGE, like I feel very excited that I have these numbers. But what are the most important numbers that you need to have to make yourself be differentiated? And is there an order that you need to go after them now that I at least have that one thing? Now, I only have it for Mississippi. I have not gone after the SBA one yet.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do you remember the first big client you got?
Mm-hmm.
Did they hire you because you were a woman?
Nope.
Okay. So I wanted to ask it that way, because we think that certifications do have their role and they're important, but we like to follow RSM Federal's guidance on that, and they're a partner of ours. They do a lot of federal consulting, and the way they always say it when they're on with us is don't lead with your certification. So while it is good that you've gotten the WOSB, and did you get it at the state level? Is that right?
I did. I got it at the state level.
Okay, so certainly it makes sense to do the federal process, right? I think you're in Virginia, right?
No, I'm in Mississippi. I'm way further
Mississippi.
south than that.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, either way, you have military bases nearby. It certainly makes sense to get the federal certification. I know some folks locally here who might be able to put you in touch with their cohorts who might be in your area. But I think you know that is certainly worthwhile. Now, you are a small business, right?
I am very
Yes.
small.
So being a small business has currency, even if you're nothing else, right? So with federal contracts, that matters. I don't know if Mississippi has its own set asides for small businesses, but I would say other than the WOSB certification, I'm not sure what other certifications you would be looking at. Herb, other thoughts about certifications specifically?
Yeah. So first of all, Karen, great to see you. Great to meet you, and congratulations on your getting your certification. That is all the steps that you've gone through, and all the documentation and all the paperwork and all the stuff. Yes, it is worth it. But to what Nick is saying is absolutely true, is that those things, think of those things as being the things that make your business more credible in the space, if you will. By no means does that mean that you have to be less competitive, because you still have to compete, right? But so I want to answer your first question, is which ones are important? They're all important. Sorry.
Okay.
Kind of what it is. But it makes you have a really great capability statement when you can fill in all those blanks. And then secondly, I would just say, please continue to do the research and find out what the needs are, what some of the problems are. And Nick talked about something earlier here, and I want to circle back to it, and that is doing a quick spending analysis just at the federal level to see how much spending is going on for your particular product or service at the federal level. Because generally speaking, whatever spend is going on at the federal level, sometimes at the state and local level, depending on what it is what product or service you offer, you might find that state and local actually spends quite a bit more than even at the federal level. And so I would do some spending analysis first, just to see. I'll use the old adage, Karen. Just follow the money, see where that spending is going, and then position yourself to compete for that money. Because I think what you'll find is that some of the incumbent contractors that you're competing against for that spend, they may not be what you are. You may be in the same space, but you may be better in a lot of areas. But if you can get with the agency so you can identify what those areas are, and I'll say this too, in your particular business, oftentimes I've found that a lot of times government agencies don't quite know what they want. I'll say this, is that you have to remember, generally speaking, contracting officers, procurement personnel, these guys are not necessarily subject matter experts in everything, right? And so sometimes it's important to sort of take a position first where you educate them about solutions that you can bring, even if there's not an RFP out. There's nothing to stop you from taking a proactive approach to, coming and getting in contact with those guys, asking for, an appointment either in person or online. Nowadays, it's really easier to get an audience with them online, and take, 15, 20, 30 minutes and just kind of make an introduction. I do that until this day, and I've been at this since 2003. So, I mean, the point is, I still do it every day. I try to make sure that I'm reaching out to agencies, either their small business coordinators or procurement, or both.
Karen,
Okay.
can I ask you, have you investigated subcontracting or the mentor protege program as it relates to federal contracts and the federal contracting that might be going on in your area?
So I'm very, very new at this. I would say this is something that we really started going after seriously at the beginning of this year. I don't fully understand how to explore the subcontractor piece of it other than someone calling me. And I did have a larger agency that did call me. This actually spurred this, that was trying to get the win, and they wanted me on the team because I was a woman-owned business, and they knew that that was a step in the right direction for them. They did not end up partnering with me on that, but that kind of opened my eyes to, if you're going to call me as one of the largest agencies in our particular state, maybe it makes sense for me to do this. And so I don't understand the subcontracting piece of it yet, but I want to.
Okay, well, let's just talk a little bit about it for a moment. So you can be a prime contractor or a subcontractor, right? Prime contract, you have the contract, subcontract, you're a secondary provider. I would say this preliminarily, because of the nature of the business you're in, there are probably a lot of federal projects that have a PR component that you could not really tell unless you read the scope of work. And one of my business partners used to have a web development firm before coming on board with us full-time as a partner. And we'd always talk about how, the firm at that time had web development projects because the state was doing a construction project involving a highway, and a tiny line item in the scope of work was, oh, by the way, there needs to be a website that just says what we're doing. So I imagine that there's a lot of that with your business. So I would be looking at data from SamGov, whether you're spending time every day looking at SamGov or we're sending you the leads every day, and look for opportunities and think of things that might have a PR component, and just start calling around and asking people what's going on with this. And then you're going to start to discover that you'll see lists of interested parties, lists of bidders. And even if there isn't a subcontracting requirement where they need to name you in their proposal, it's old-fashioned networking at that point, where they're going to need your help anyway if they can't do the PR part. So there's just a ton of opportunity federally with what you do, I think. Irv, other thoughts with that, or Karen?
Well, I definitely have seen, since we've started this exploration, I'm just getting state notifications right now from our state organization. I have seen that there's a ton of ARPA money that's out there being utilized for marketing and public relations right now, and that has been an eye-opener. But the RFPs, we've already done 2, which, as Serena mentioned, it was a large investment to do both of them, both time and everything. And for some reason here in Mississippi, they need hard copies delivered by hand, which is ridiculous. And I don't trust, after putting that much effort, the US Post Office or UPS or FedEx at that point. So it's a lot of driving and delivering stuff, which I think is archaic. But that's how they ask for them, and so you don't get an option if you're trying to get in there. But I feel like my feet are slightly dipping into the pool, and that I really don't know if I can swim yet, and so I feel like I don't know more than I know.
Well, you have the right attitude, and I would say this also. You're a successful business person in your own right. You have a successful commercial practice. I would not give in to the temptation to say to yourself, I can't learn all of this stuff. It's too hard. I don't have too many other responsibilities. I would look at it this way. How much time do you have in a month, in a quarter, to devote to this? And just keep chipping away at it, right? Because you can meet a need, and you don't have to be full-time in business development for GovCon in order to be successful. You just have to make good decisions about, when you do spend time, how are you spending your time? The mentor protege program is something I would definitely look into once you get your woman-owned certification federally. It's a program that allows a much larger organization to joint venture with you and receive credit as if they are a small woman-owned business. So, for example, federal contract X is set aside for women-owned businesses, let's say. Well, you don't have maybe all the resources they need. Maybe you don't have the finances to implement such a large endeavor. You can get a partner through this federal program, Mentor Protege, to underwrite the implementation of that contract. And their benefit is they get to participate even disproportionately in the work and receive credit for your joint venture offer being with your status not with theirs, because they might just be a large company with no designations. So I know I just said a mouthful. Questions?
I don't know enough to ask questions, but I do know that I tuned into another telecast very similar to this, or conference call, I should say. And there's a backlog for federally getting certified as a small woman's own business that is over a year long at this point. They did say, and with us talking veterans, they did say that has now gotten to where they're certifying those in like a month. So gosh, if you can do the veteran owned piece too, go get it. But yeah, I'm looking at least a year before I could even remotely get it. And it took me a good 5 months. I just, well, it was last month that I finally got my certification, and I'm gonna have to, I guess, do it again, to get in this federal space.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the reality of it. And just an aside, Irv, I don't know how often you run up against this, but I'm seeing this in other aspects of my dealings with the federal government. Where isn't there a backlog in the federal government?
True.
Well,
True.
yeah, Nick, the federal agencies are pretty much understaffed now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And just due to a lot of budget cuts and things like that. So, I think a couple of things have happened. I think the GovCon space is growing, and here it is. Our state and federal agencies are understaffed, and I was just with our director here at our local SBA, and same thing's going on there. Where there is literally a reduction in personnel inside the agency is what I'm saying, just because of retirements. I mean, some of these guys they've been government employees for 40 years, and so there's a lot of retirement going on. And so the net of it is that there's a fair amount of understaffing going on just really across the country.
Well, I could say that within my own business that I struggle with that too. So I think we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will tell you, Karen, I'm excited to hear about your incredible courage to tackle something like this. But I will leave you with a word of encouragement. Everything that you're going through, the learning curve, it's all worth it. I promise it's worth it. You can generate a really significant boost in your company's revenue and profits by adding this element to your offering stack, if you will. The thing that I've appreciated so much about being in the government contracting space is it's front end loaded. I'll put it that way. You're on the front end of it, and so I promise you it gets easier once you've gone through it. I have people all the time tell me, Irv, this government contracting thing is a hassle. And you know what I tell them? Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's also worth it.
Well, that is really good to hear, because I promise there have been a couple of times that I was like, I'm just going to throw my laptop in the road and stop. Like, I'm done. But it was great when it finally happened for me to get the woman-owned certification. I think the next one I am going to go after is with the SBA, just because if there's a year before anything's going to happen, let me get that year started. And then I'll continue to go after some more state certifications for rural areas, hub zones, things of that nature that I know I qualify for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Nick or myself, because this is stuff that we do every day. So, if you're new at this, or if you're just kind of trying to get your feet wet, or, that sort of thing, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
And Karen, I think you had questions. And by the way, we're going to invite Jana to join us in a moment with related questions. But did you also have questions about whether to bid on things that are outside of your area?
I did, because all I've bid on so far has been here within our state. And I feel like I'm going up against Goliath, obviously, because I do know that these big agencies, when you tune in to like the RFP calls and things of that nature, I see them. I know who they are on those calls. And I don't know if it makes sense for me to be bidding on something that's in Alabama or Texas, or like you said, Virginia. I don't know if it makes sense for me to be involved in stuff like that.
I would say this, and Irv, certainly please comment on this as well. The government is starting to understand for certain products and services, it doesn't matter where you are. Now, are there holdouts where in the evaluation it says 15 points if you're in our state, 20 points if you're in our county? That's certainly going to continue to happen. But if they're not saying that in the evaluation and you believe you can provide a service, even perhaps, maybe even more competitively because your cost of living and the economics of where you are different than New York City,
Sure.
that's a reason to jump in. So I wouldn't be shy about that, depending on how the evaluation criteria read.
Would you say I
Yeah,
need to wait to do that till I get my certification though with the federal certification?
no, no,
No?
no. You don't have to wait. Listen, there's nothing that's ever going to stop you from bidding, right? Certified or not.
Okay.
And the main thing I would just say is if you're in doubt, bid.
Okay.
All right.
And yeah, it's something where you want to back your way out of that, meaning don't be frustrated that you can't get 80 bids in a year. Pick 4 or 5 in a year that you know you should be able to do the work at a competitive price and just say, you know what, we're going to devote the time. This is the amount of time we have. This is what we're going to do. There are bids that happen all the time where no one bids. Now,
That's right.
certainly that's more likely to happen at the local level, right? But it does happen, and you should be comforted by that.
All righty.
So I think we're going to ask, is it Jana or Jana to turn on the mic at least? And Karen, you can stay with us. Some things may come up that might, require a larger conversation. So did I get the name right? We just need your audio.
This off. Ah, I did it.
Yes.
Hi,
And give us the correct pronunciation of your name.
it's Jana Rugg.
Jana, thank you for joining us already. I can tell you have a lot in common with Mrs. Bernardo because I don't think she has the number of medals on her wall that you have, but I recognize your wall immediately. Are you a runner?
I forgot to fuzz it out.
No, that's fine. Are you a
couldn't figure-
runner?
I do run. I run and do triathlons.
Fantastic. So welcome to MyGovWatch Live. What do you do and where are you joining us from?
Thank you so much. This is my first time to visit your webinar, and I'm already learning a lot. I own a small business. I'm located in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, and I've had a business for 20 years called Ridgemont Resources, and we provide recruitment services for pharmacy and speech therapy. That's what I've done for 20 years. And about 3 years ago, I started the process to get a GSA contract because I would call and talk to a pharmacist about a job and I would find out they'd been working at the VA for 3 years on a contract. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like something I'd like to have a piece of. And so I started the process to get a GSA contract. And for whatever reason, the way that I did it, I ended up with an FSS schedule. I'm finding I can't really bid on much of the VA positions because most of those are set aside for veteran-owned businesses. But I have found some, just through going through eBuy, I've found some opportunities to, provide proposals for, but I'm seriously just getting started too to figure out what to do.
Well, it sounds really specific. And we have 204 categories of activities that we're tracking on our site. We have one for pharmacy and one for therapy that includes speech therapy. So, Irv, I wonder if you agree with this. If there were bids and RFPs that you would see every week and every month where they're saying we're hiring a firm for pharmacy or we're hiring a firm for speech therapy, even if you're not directly providing it and you're providing staffing essentially, I don't think you would just do nothing, would you?
No, listen, if I had those kinds of opportunities coming every day, I would absolutely spin off a staffing element, business unit to my company. Because frankly, if you're have been a recruiter and are a recruiter, and first of all, Jana, thanks so much for being on with us today. But yeah, I think your skill set I just think that you've got opportunities that are probably right there in front of you. It might mean that you simply need to consider making a small adjustment to your existing business model so that you can go and compete for those opportunities, because frankly, those opportunities are there. I just feel like with an adjustment in your model where you can get on the front end of it, where now you're competing after those opportunities, because oftentimes it's almost similar to those of us who have been in the service sector for a long time. It's sometimes it's just a small adjustment. It's really not a big jump for you to be able to reposition your company to be able to compete directly for that kind of business, because you're already a recruiter.
Right.
So I wonder if this would be possible too, and this would like supplement what Irv just went through, which I completely agree with. If there is an opportunity and an RFP says we're hiring speech therapists and they want a firm that has employees that do it, right? That's not what you do, right? In other words, you're providing people, right?
Right. I'm going to find the speech therapist, and I'm going to pay that speech therapist to work at that organization, and I'm going to bill them weekly for the hours that worked.
So
Contingent staffing.
I wonder if you had a constant feed from MyGovWatch of therapy and pharmacy opportunities. Could you be a subcontractor, right? Where maybe they want to hire a firm that has the in-house bodies, but you can come in, as an alternate way of doing business and saying, look, I will help you meet this need as a subcontractor. And that way you're not even responding to the RFP. Your client is the prime contractor. So that's another way of doing it as well. And I wonder what you think of that.
Well, I love that idea. And I know that, I've been able to win actually 3 awards so far, and it's been a year. And they were all like an individual situation where like this particular prison needs a pharmacist for 1 to 5 years. And all I had to do was quote an hourly rate of what I would bill them. And then I had to find the pharmacist and send them out. But I'd love to do that way more. And it's just not finding a ton of opportunities, where they're needing that particular need. And I would love to learn how to subcontract with maybe a huge medical staffing company that's doing like all the medical positions. But how do you find them? How do you find bigger companies that would want to? I am woman-owned certified for the federal government, a woman-owned small business. So like, how do I find companies that would want to partner? I think I've been really intrigued with the whole partnering idea, but I have no idea how to start.
Yeah, so you're good at figuring out like, where does 2 + 2 = 4? Well, with the bid process, and if you're getting leads from MyGovWatch, by the way, regionally is $60 a month. It's a no-brainer. You will get a feed of leads that are in medical staffing, pharmacy, therapy, and all of the above. And then at that point, someone on our team can show you how to use the website to identify who the prime bidders are. So in some cases, you might say, I'm going to go after this myself as a prime bidder. In other cases, you can use our site as a jumping off point to see, well, here's a list of interested parties. I'm just going to go call some of the people who are on here and just get into some conversations. So what you're describing and what I'm describing is a very straightforward thing where you've already had success because you have some government contracts. So whether you're using our site or a competing site, I would say you should start looking at more bid opportunities, because there's a big enough feed in therapy and pharmacy where there are individual categories on our site.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Jana, I want to chime in too, Jana, and just help you understand, based on just what I've just heard, you're a lot closer than you think, because you've already been awarded. And so those are direct awards. Those don't accidentally happen. You had to do a lot of things right already. And so just so that you can expand on that, I think you're absolutely right, because if you've gotten 3 awards, you just want to accelerate that and make sure you're getting in front of more of those opportunities, number one. And then number 2 is, I agree with Nick, to look at subcontracting opportunities, because look, you've already got it. Once you perform on those awards, you've already got federal references, right?
Mhm.
And so I think you should leverage that, and especially where there's subcontracting opportunities, you can certainly leverage that because now you've, as people will say, you've already gotten your foot in the door, so you may be closer than you think.
Yes.
In the door. But where do you find those? Like, where do you find the companies to reach out to that are subcontracting?
Yeah. So two ways. So what we're doing is we're aggregating data from thousands of websites every night where they're listing the projects, and then it all goes into the database. And then our system figures out who should see the pharmacy leads, who should see the therapy leads. So you get an email every day that says, here's what's happening in therapy and pharmacy and medical staffing. Then we show you where the lead came from. And oftentimes, if it's a state website or a county website, they require interested parties to list themselves on the site. So our service to you is telling you these are the opportunities. We then pass you over to where we got the lead, where you many times will be able to see that information. That's way number one. Way number two is you can use our site to track what's happening and decide to go get a list of bidders after the award closes through the open records or FOIA process. So you can use our website to have us go get documents that will show you, here are the companies that won different contracts. Here's the pricing that they're contracted for. And how powerful is it in your business if you know what they're charging?
Huge. I mean, seriously,
You
on
know
these
what the
ones that
difference is.
I just made a guess. Like I knew what I thought I would need to pay the pharmacist and then what my margins would be, but it was a total shot in the dark and a little miracle that I won any of the ones that I have so far.
Yeah.
Because
So
it's like Karen was saying, you have no idea what you're doing. They just put you get started and you just have to figure things out.
well, you're already figuring things out. I'll just make you this offer. And I'd like to say, because you're a runner, and you've joined us, but it's really, we make this offer to everybody who jumps on the webinar. When you go to our website, it says it's a 2-week free trial. If you start a trial this week, I'll extend it to a month and I'll take personal responsibility for your trial.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's a great move for you to do that because you've already got a model that works. All you need to do now is quantify it. So you make sure that you can perhaps even take advantage of open recs, right? Where you can go on and pull some of those pull historical data from maybe competitors so you can make sure that you're benchmarking against whatever the agency has agreed to pay so that you know that in your pricing, you can better protect your margins because being in the GovCon space, I'm just telling you, you have to know where you are with regard to your margins because you don't want to take the risk of getting upside down in a particular contract because there's no way out of it. Okay, so you have to make sure that you know your right side up. So those would be my recommendations.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us. And Rochelle, I know you've joined us a little bit late. Do me a favor, just raise your hand if you would like to participate or if you would just like to have me read some of your questions. I'm happy to do that. I just need some indication, whether raising your hand or a chat. Raise your hand if you'd like to come on with us or send us a chat if you'd like me to just read some of your questions and go through the answers. But any parting thoughts? Jana, any parting thoughts at all or follow-up questions?
I'm just very, very grateful that I found your group and I'm looking forward to learning more from you and from all the other speakers that you have on.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. And please stay on. We'll probably be here another 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
And if you think of anything else, just raise your hand and we'll bring you back in.
All right. And you turn the camera off or do I do that?
I will put you back in as an attendee.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yep. And we have some questions from Rochelle, who's not in a position to join us. But one of Rochelle's questions is, what should be in my capability statement? And so for those of you who may not be familiar with that, that's a term of art as it relates to federal contracting. It's something that federal buyers expect you to have, a 1 or 2 page document that lists out certain things about your company that they recognize in a format that they've seen many, many times. And so one of Rochelle's questions is, what should be in your capability statement? Great question. Number one, we'll get the easy stuff out of the way first, right? There should be contact information. There should be a list of NAICS codes that are associated with your business. You could show one as the primary NAICS. You could show others as secondary NAICS codes. You should indicate for those NAICS codes, which of those are you a small business under the NAICS code? Because you may have one NAICS code under your business where you are a small business. You may have others where you are not a small business. So I would include that information. What designations do you have? Socioeconomic designations. Now, although we said earlier that you're not leading with those, if you're a service-disabled veteran-owned business or a woman-owned business, those should be on there. If you're a small business, that should be on there. So there should be like a little box that says small business, woman-owned business, service-disabled, whatever the case may be. Past performance. Past performance is so important as it relates to federal contracting. That's also a term of art. I would look at your capability statement the same way an individual would look at his or her resume, right? And so professional resume writers talk about always quantifying what you've done. So when you have your past performance section in your capability statement, say, this is who I did it for. This is how I can quantify the work. If it's a product, how many units? If it's a service, find some ways to quantify that service. And if you had success that's quantifiable, show them that number as well. So past performance and naming clients where you are able to do that if you're not violating your agreement with the client. Key personnel, that would be another thing. So if there are certain people who have resumes that are super advantageous, just list them out. Like if there's a certain person who's recognizable in the business community, make sure their names are in it as key personnel. Differentiators. How is your company different for the NAICS codes and the services and products that you're providing? And make sure they're super specific to your company and make sure your differentiators are really differentiators and they're not things that you think are different, but that they're really different. Testimonials. If any clients are willing to give you a 1 or 2 sentence thing where they're willing to put their name on it, I would include that. Other certifications, anything else that might be useful to know, sort of data security, any other certifications that you may have that apply to your business, I would include those. And lastly, it's got to be pretty. Graphics, spend a little time, spend a little money with a graphic designer, make sure it looks good. Now, Irv, I will tell you that was my prepared response. Anything to add to that?
I would just say maybe be very specific about describing what your value proposition is in your company description. Just make sure it's not a 8-page narrative. I mean, make it brief and spend some time on making sure that the description that's in your capability statement clearly articulates your core capability. Many business owners make the mistake of saying, well, I can do this, and this. That's all true, perhaps, but I just wanted to say, make sure you emphasize what your company's core capability is.
Well stated.
So I just wanted to throw that out. Everything else, what Nick said.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a really good point, Irv, because I think sometimes, especially newer businesses or businesses newer to federal contracting, they don't realize that there's a certain element of addition by subtraction, right? Yes. People really remember 1 or 2 things, but when you ask them to remember 7 or 8 things, I don't know what they're going to remember at that point.
Right.
And so, Rochelle, you had some other questions about contracting officers. So, Irv, let me ask this as a question to you. What is your experience, if any, with where the federal government is drawing their contracting officers from? Where do you think they're coming from?
Yeah, many of them, believe it or not, are coming from military. So you got to think about when these guys separate from the military, if they have been in any kind of previous contracting command or administration in the military, kind of a natural move, if you will, for those guys separating from military are actually moving into procurement in the federal agencies. And so that's, believe it or not, that's where quite a number of those folks come from, is they come from the military because they were already oriented, if you will, with procurement, budgeting, things like this. They know most of the rules with regard to the FAR and so on and so forth. So it's really, really important, I think, to understand that a lot of these guys do come from military.
Yeah, and we actually posed that question to one of our other organizational partners, the law firm Coprince McCall Potroff, and their federal government contracting attorneys. And one of their lead attorneys gave me the same answer. They're coming a lot of times from the military community. Now, I have had, well, and another question was like, what's the best way to communicate with contracting officers? Well, there's two contexts for that. There's one during a bid process, or when someone knows that a bid process is imminent. At that point, it's all got to be by the book, by email, only, when requested. So outside of a procurement, now it's a little bit more open-ended in terms of how you contact these people. But I would ask myself, if I were going to do some pre-marketing to a contracting officer, what is that person's background? Is this person one of the large percentage of people that comes from the military community or from another part of government? Or is it someone who came from the private sector into a contracting officer role? I will tell you, I've had a couple of relationships with contracting officers in a previous life. One that was a very good relationship because the person came from the private sector. One where it didn't go so well because I don't have a government background. I'm just a guy who likes to talk to people. And I kind of put the person off because I wasn't at that stage of my career aware of certain boundaries. So I would really try to study the background of the person that you're wanting to contact and then decide what's the best way to do it. Is it an email? Is it a phone call? And I think their background will help you tell that. Other thoughts about that, Irv?
Yeah, I will tell you guys, listen, part of what I do with regard to connecting with contracting officers and people in procurement, especially in government, I do go and look for them. I know it's going to sound maybe weird to some of you guys, but I literally go look for them in social media because I really want to know, believe it or not, some of these guys actually have a social media footprint, whether that's LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that. I literally want to go and learn something about who those folks are. And I will tell you, one of the things that I've done too is when they don't have a social media footprint, some of that's by design because these guys are military, so some of them steer clear of social media. One of the things that I like to do is literally ask about whether or not they have been in the military and what was their military service. Because, I think it's important that, to Nick's point, that you know something either about the agency. I will tell you another thing that I pay attention to is when anytime there's an announcement from a government agency about a new hire or a promotion, I literally take advantage of those opportunities and send them some sort of messaging that says congratulations in your new role. Believe it or not, all I'm trying to do is just make that initial connection, just to open communication and simply say, hey, listen, I'm hoping to reach out at some point in the future and maybe we can connect. Nothing more than that. And it's kind of like what Nick was getting at earlier, guys. Be careful of how you communicate. It's not time for you to make a sale. You're just trying to make a connection. And in this instance, less is more. Get to the point of why you're reaching out. And so one of the nice things is if you approach it from the standpoint of, hey, I'm building my network of connections and like for you to be a connect. Simple. And guess what? Now they get to say yes or no. Well, you'll find out that most people, especially in procurement, they will respond to that, positively, or they won't respond at all.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And speaking of connecting, I'm just going to kind of leave things open. We're almost at 90 minutes here. Now would be the time for anyone who has a question to raise their hand or type it into the chat. But Irv, what's the best way that you can recommend that people connect with you? Like some people do LinkedIn, some people want you to join an email list. How should people keep in touch with you? And by the way, this will live on YouTube later. If you want to give your cell phone out, that's up to you.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, Nick. Yeah, so for those of you guys who got questions, first of all, you're absolutely right, Nick. I'm a giant LinkedIn person, so go out there and find me on LinkedIn and connect. I will connect with you, number one. And then number two, yes, if you just have something that maybe you've got that burning question, certainly email me, and you can send me email. I guess I should put it in the chat, huh? But you can email me at Ervin, that's ERVIN .Hughes, HUGHES as in Sam, at ACABOS as in Sam.com.
And also, Erva, I guess you can tell me this later, but we put the YouTube has the description. If you want me to put that in the YouTube description, I can do that.
Yeah.
Just a comment from one of our user organizations. Kerry, thank you so much. This has been so helpful, Kerry says. Thank you for this time. Questions have been answered during this time. So thank you so much for that kind comment. So Erv, any parting thoughts in terms of like either events that you're going to, things that you're looking forward to, or just parting thoughts at all?
Yeah, so for our listening audience, guys, just understand that if you're needing, let's say you've gone out, you've either, you're selling a product or you're selling a service to a government agency, and you find out that that opportunity may be bigger than what's in your bank account, and you need financing, reach out to us, reach out to me, or you can just start an application right at aca.credit, www.aca.credit. You can start an application right there. We have a secure platform where you can literally start building out your financing application, pull together all your files so it's all in one place. And even if you have a lender that's not us, we offer that for free. So you can literally go on there and build your lending file and collect all of the supporting documents and everything. And if you tell us who it is you want that file to go to, we're happy to push that file on to a particular lender. Or if you don't have a lender, we're certainly happy to consider financing your purchase orders and or contracts either with us or with one of our partners. So you kind of got a one-stop shop there to do that at aca.credit. Or you can certainly give me a call. My direct phone, that's the phone to my desk, so you'll get me, is 832-777-3766. I get lots of phone calls, guys, so that's why I recommend you email me first. But if you just need to call, go ahead and call, and we'll make sure that we get back to you.
Well, Irv, thank you so much. It's always fun to have you on. It's refreshing because you have such a broad background in all of the things. We have a lot of people on here who don't necessarily have the finance background, so that is certainly of benefit to our users and our people listening. So thank you so much. And folks, with that, that'll end today's edition of MyGovWatch Live. And remember, if you're not already a subscriber, start your free 14-day trial of MyGovWatch today. If you want to win more government contracts for less, you'll be glad you did. Hey, Irv, thanks again and have a good afternoon.
Thanks so much, Nick. Have a great one.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.